Hello, you're listening to the TerraLex podcast, where we break down current issues and trends in the legal industry. Join us as we gain valuable insights from our member law firms across the world, as well as from the in-house counsel community and experienced professionals in their field.
So, welcome everyone to the Women's Global Connection. This is a group within the TerraLex network, which was created for the purpose of encouraging participation by women lawyers within TerraLex, although the group is by no means exclusive to women. What we do is offer programming of particular interest to women, and we aim to foster supportive relationships among women of different cultures, generations, and experiences. Since the group began offering formal programming at meetings, which was some 8 years ago now, we've hosted speakers on topics including marketing, communication styles, rainmaking, branding, professional development, and empowerment. Two of our recent initiatives have included an Aquitas study, which we commissioned on diversity, which took soundings from surveys right across the world. And we then had a very interesting discussion about the outcome from that survey at our most recent meeting in Phoenix. And what struck us as being one of the interesting outputs from the survey was the differences across different regions of the world in terms of the approach to diversity and inclusion. And the other program that has recently come out of the Women's Network is our mentorship program, which operates across borders and across different regions of the world. So today what we're planning to do is have a conversation between us, all of whom know each other very well, about some topics which are close to our hearts. They're the sort of topics we do discuss when we meet, and we're doing it differently on this occasion because we're meeting virtually, but we hope that the fact that we're meeting virtually will not in any sense affect the quality of the discussion. We'll be allowing you to dip in and out of our discussion through the video recording. So the first topic on our list is gender differences in what drives people and the importance of diverse boards. Here in the UK, we've had for a number of years a programme which was aimed at achieving a gender diversity in boards of at least 30% of female board members. It's below the percentage that is a requirement in certain parts of Northern Europe. It's not a requirement here in the UK, but huge strides have been made in achieving a 30% female representation on boards, and we're now pretty close to that ambition and that benchmark. That of course only deals with gender diversity, and we all know that there are many strands of diversity. I think in the US it's described as social diversity that we need to ensure we embrace on boards and throughout organisations. The strands of diversity, of course, include ethnicity, include age, include different religions, etc., etc. And one of the strands that is close to my heart is social diversity, those diversity of social backgrounds. Why is it important? We think it's important because a diverse board will more closely represent the people whom the board serves, and because a diverse board will, it is hoped, avoid the dangers of groupthink and boards becoming echo chambers of themselves. So why don't I ask one of you ladies to contribute from your perspective and your area of the world. Catharine, shall we start with you from the US?
Yeah, delighted to. As y'all all know, I'm located in the southern United States and have been practicing law for a long time. You know, I think it's very interesting the promotion of diversity, all kinds of diversity, is important because it's the right thing to do. But you also can't lose sight of the fact that it actually has a very positive economic impact. A recent study in the U.S. Came up with average about 9.5% to 10% increase in corporate value, where the corporations were actively trying to improve and were in fact improving diversity on their board. And the 10% increase was actually associated with getting more women on boards, which I thought was very interesting. So I think progress is being made in the U.S. It's going to be another interesting time to see if the major disruption corporate-wise, which is worldwide in companies, is going to kind of get that off kilter. The last study that I saw was done by Equilar, and they had predicted that by 2030, companies that were at the Russell 3000 level would have at least 50% of their boards would be women. And there's been a lot of discussion about that because corporate boards, particularly public corporate boards, have tended in the past to have older people on the board. They get on there, they stay 9 to 12 years. Those demographics are certainly changing, and they have to change in order to open up an opportunity for women and people of color and other diverse groups to get seats on those boards. I think a lot of progress is being made. I do think we have to be concerned about how the COVID pandemic and the associated economic upheaval is going to affect that. Is it going to make people move back? And the last comment I'll make on this topic is that I think that a lot of the consultants, at least, who are advising companies, including director recruiting firms that I've talked with, are saying to companies, you need diversity now more than ever if you want to survive the pandemic and the economic upheaval. Whether that advice will be taken is another matter, but we can only hope that they will take that advice. So I'll pass it to, how about Anna?
Anna, yes. It's back to Europe, Southern Europe.
Hi, thank you, Catherine. So here, to pick up on your last comment, here what we're thinking about the pandemic is that it might have really a hard effect on women because culturally in countries like Spain, Southern Europe in general, carrying duties are traditionally on the women's sphere. So basically it's a duty of a woman to take care of people who are sick, not only the children. So with the pandemic, we've seen that many women have had to stay at home, either to take care of the scholarization of the young ones, either to take care of relatives. So really what we are on a global scale, what I think this is going to really be a challenge here. Plus, if many people have lost their jobs, I think it's going to be even harder on women than in men. Luckily, I think law firms, it's going to be hard for us, but not as in other sectors like tourism, for example, or services, which here in Spain are really big part of the economy. So I hope that law firms are not going to suffer the same tendency. However, in a survey that was released last year about what female lawyers were thinking in Spain, very high percentage, I don't remember, but close to 60% were still thinking of feeling that they're not being promoted, that they're not going to be able to do the career as their male colleagues. So the perception that you cannot achieve the same goals is still very heavily rooted, I would say, in our system. Maybe things change slowly. We have the equality legislation that came into force just in March, just right before the pandemic started here, and so all the companies over 50 employees are. It's mandatory that they have an equality plan, but it only concerns diversity in women and men. It doesn't concern any other social diversity. We are that sort of diversity. We're way behind. I think because as well our society is not yet as diverse as in other countries. But, well, that's a little bit the situation.
So should we, before we move back to the US, let's move over to Asia and hear about the perspective from Hong Kong and China.
Well, thank you, Geraldine and Catharine and Anna. I live in Hong Kong, and we are most people here are Asian, so there are not a lot of diverse races. So we will have mostly, when we talk about diversity, it will be the sexes. And sometimes you seek diversity, sometimes diversity is thrust upon you, because in the law schools, there are 75% enrollment are women. So in due course, that shift is just going to have to push out. But unfortunately, of course, in the board level, managerial, management partner level, these are still mostly entrenched with the men. So what I think one needs is to try to promote more women on board levels, because otherwise it is exactly like men making decisions about whether or not women can have an abortion. They're thinking about something that doesn't relate to them, so it's not really close to heart. So right now, when I'm recruiting, I see most candidates are female. So at some point, the shift will be thrust upon us. In terms of the COVID, I have seen advertisements and on Facebook, people saying lawyers who are working from home, they have the added difficulty of having to take care of the children when they are in the house. And there are signs that say, I am not at home, I'm actually working, and your hunger is not an emergency. I mean, so that children will not keep knocking on their doors. And it's really hard, because when you're the mother, you go home, you can take care of them. But when you're supposed to be working from home, I don't know how the women will be able to balance. And this work from home may persist even beyond the pandemic leaving us, because it seems to be that people are thinking in terms of also less seating costs, less rental. They are learning to actually adopt this model, and more people are hot desking, so they need less square footage. So I mean, somehow the female lawyer with young children will have to again try and balance, and I think that's very hard. I mean, it's a great difficulty when you have young children to take care of, and then you're trying to take care of them and you're working from home. But as far as that's concerned, we'll have to wait and see how it evolves after the pandemic. Over back to you, Geraldine.
Very well. Let's hear from Tina in America on the West Coast. I think one of the challenges, Tina, I don't know what your response to this is persuading everybody that has the power to influence gender balances, why it's so important.
I think that is something that we have seen sort of throughout the times that we've been trying to do this. So for example, we originally had maternity leave, and as we wanted to expand that to family leave, we had a really difficult time getting even the male attorneys to adopt it. And we ended up finding that we had to, once we got the men to start adopting it, then the women felt better. So it's an education process the entire time, and we find that we've seen it kind of again and again and again, getting the folks to adopt it, even if women are supportive, if they don't see it throughout the organization, whichever organization we would like to be talking about right now. We've just had a really hard time getting traction. And so we do spend a little bit more time talking generally, like whether it's to your firm or to volunteer organizations or boards, wherever you are, convincing them that this is a meaningful and significant change and an important one to make. And this is not we're looking at the tallies of how many categories can we hit. And that these people, we all add value in our different ways. And so we have been spending time trying to make sure that people understand that we're not doing this just to do it, that we're doing it for a reason, and that it has a significant and substantive value to it.
I was just wondering whether now with the increased paternity leave that the governments impose.
Oh.
I think it's a welcome thing because it seems to make it more important that, you know, this role of paternity, maternity leave and paternity leave is a shared job. And it actually gives women less embarrassment to say, I actually want to take 6 months to a year to take care of my young child. You know, if it is more balanced, if you have paternity leave as well as maternity leave, then I feel that it sort of gives them some, you know, less shame, or maybe, you know, more bravery to speak up and say that, you know, this is what I want to do. I wonder if that happens in your other countries as well, paternity leave.
Paternity leave has started. It was in Spain. It was not a traditional thing. When I had my first child, my husband had 3 days of paternity leave, and nowadays, by law, you have up to 15 days as
That's
a
not
father.
much.
But it's more than 3.
More than 3, yeah, here we go.
So, and I guess it's gonna just go on that direction. In our law firm, we actually had 2 lawyers asking for it this year, which I think is great. I think it's a way forward. If some lawyers do it, and then the other ones, their peers see it, and they say, okay, that's
right.
cool, that's good, it's nice. And I think that's the way you get the snowball effect. So, and when liaising with what you were saying, Tina, I think that with the COVID, many male have also been working at home, and they've seen how it is, children and so on. And either they never go back because no, this is too much work, no way. Either they think like, okay, it's a nice way of balancing. So that might be also a good thing. Let's hope for the latter.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, it's one of the positives that's come out of the recent crisis is that, you know, many couples are finding that they're really having to share the burden of young children at home, husband and wife both working, 2 little kids at home, and they're having to do shift work. And I think that will change mindsets. I think one of the other important things is that if we are going to try and change mindsets, talking about, you know, paternity leave and what we have in the UK, which is called shared parental leave, which is up to 6 months. To change those mindsets, you do have to lead from the top. And, you know, taking a law firm as an example, it's not going to happen unless some of the partners also take some time at home with the children.
If I could add to the discussion, I'll show my age now. My daughter was born in 1983, and there was no maternity leave. I took no maternity leave. It was expected during that period of time, at least in the southern U.S., if not the whole U.S., that when you had a child like that, you would just stay home and you wouldn't be coming back to work for an extended period. However, that was not what I did. And it was very, very hard. About 5 years after that, our firm finally adopted some maternity leave policies, and we now have parental leave throughout the firm. But to the point y'all have all been making, very few men have taken that leave. Some have. I think there's an increasing number doing it. And I think what's so interesting, though, is that the amount of time it takes to get these changes to occur. You'll have incremental changes for a decade or more, and then all of a sudden there is something that really pushes and causes a more dramatic step forward, one hopes, not step backward on these issues. And I do actually think that the pandemic and the circumstances of people having to be at home may push things forward more exponentially over the next few years. I think it's certainly going to change the way law firms operate. Now, companies are a bit of a different matter, but law firm operation in the U.S., there's so many things, external forces, new competitors, if you will, in the marketplace that are not traditional law firms, that I think we're really going to see a major upheaval in how legal services are delivered in the United States in the next 5 years. I think it's already starting to happen.
Moving the conversation on a little bit, what are the challenges that you face in trying to build women up around you? So all of you, us, are leaders in law firms, but the generations that follow are still facing difficulties. What can we all do to support those generations?
I think it's important to empower women and let them feel that the opportunity is supported, because a lot of the times they are very used to, or will have grown used to, giving in, or sort of being recessive. And it's necessary to actually create the opportunity to pull them up, to cognitively make them part of the conversation, make them part of the leaders of a team, or give them that role so that they feel more comfortable. Sometimes they are so used to stepping back that if you push them forward, they would still want to hang on because it's a comfort zone. So, I mean, the opportunity must be to really just create it for them and pull them along. For a young female lawyer is what I'm thinking.
I also have found when we're trying to move people into leadership roles, or even into a different area of law or some unique circumstance, you will have, I think we look at, I will say, I'll say it for myself. You look at what you understand to be the job description, and you feel that you are not particularly qualified for that in some way. And I think we tend to I tend to sometimes look at things and go, oh, I shouldn't do this. There's probably somebody else who would do this better than me. And learning how to realize that, no, it takes all kinds of people with all kinds of different skill sets, and the other people are learning these things just as you do, and it's okay to come forward, and it's okay to seek new learning opportunities. And you don't have to be, this is probably my personal thing, you don't have to be perfect the very first time that you do it, because I always want it to be perfect. And so I think when I've been trying to grow young associates, whether we're looking at gender or any of the other diversity qualities, it's giving them the opportunities, and then I end up spending some time telling them they can do it. And I think that is part of this growth opportunity, is trying to figure out how to get people to step in, even once you've created a position or you've created a unique opportunity for work or a different kind of work. Having those individuals feel confident to step into that gap is something that I don't know why, since I did it, but it surprised me how difficult it can sometimes be. And it's also, and I think with women in particular, if we have children at home or other responsibilities that are outside of the office, feeling that you have the time to invest to be able to do that, I think, is also something that you have to kind of address and talk through at the beginning in order to get women to step into those opportunities.
Tina, you made two, I think, really important points. Number one is, you can do it has to be the mantra. I've always said failure is not in my vocabulary. Even if I lose a case, I don't consider it a failure, because I learned something. And if you don't have that proactive mindset, it becomes very difficult to succeed, no matter who you are. But I think the second piece is, you have to keep in mind, and I try to tell younger women lawyers in particular this: success looks different for everybody. What was success for me, or the other associate down the hall, it is something different. And if you suddenly realize you can't, again, I don't like to have failure in my vocabulary, so one way you can always succeed is to not only set aspirational goals and try to reach for them, but don't be afraid to adjust those goals a little back if you need to, if you've reached too far. And you just have to take things a step at a time. And I just think it's what you said about telling people you can do it is so important. And helping them define what that it is for themselves is also a very important thing.
Yeah, I have also noticed in a law firm, you have a traditional role, associate, partner, there's a partner track, sometimes an equity partner track on top of that. And one of the things that I have been trying to work with, we've been trying to address in our firm, is what about people who don't want that traditional track? and how do you find a place for them, and how do you acknowledge the value that people bring even if they aren't on the partnership track. So I don't have an answer for you guys yet, but that's one of the things that we're also struggling with, is that, to Catherine's point about there are different kinds of success. I've had conversations with folks who are saying, I don't want to be you. I don't want to do those things with what I want to, with how I want to live my life, with how I define success. And so I think trying to figure out new roles is going to be something that we're going to have to do as well, because to the diversity and inclusion just generally point, all people add value and you want to keep them. And if you only have one very narrow cookie cutter mold that is defined as the sort of route to success in your firm, I think that's going to cause us problems in the future, both with attracting talent and keeping it, which is always a big concern for us.
I think it's a particular problem in law firms. It's that cliff edge. You know, you're an associate or you're a partner, and what is there in between? And there is so much in between, or there should be so much in between, but there isn't necessarily the external recognition. And law firms have dabbled for ages with trying to find ways of addressing this problem. I think we all know it's a problem, but I don't think we found a solution. And I think the corporate environment is probably much better geared towards making sure that there are roles for people, a full range of roles that we just don't have in law firms. And I completely agree, it is a problem. And for women in particular who may want to devote time to bringing up children, sometimes what they'll choose to do, and I understand why, is move off the partnership career track for a period, and maybe for a long period, and come back again. And that's a loss to a law firm. And I think it's a great shame that we, at the moment, haven't really grappled with that. I don't know the answer. I'd love to find the answer to that. I don't know if the position in Spain is similar.
Absolutely, and I think we all would love to know that solution. I think we all see that really good and talented female lawyers just leave from law firms directly. They just not. They tell you, I don't want to be like you, but I can't, and then I'm just gonna leave. It's too hard. We had a survey just when we were applying in our diversity group. We were putting in place this diversity and equality program. And then we asked some questions to all the female lawyers. And I was very surprised, because sometimes you think that you have the structures, you have the opportunities, you think you have communicated them. And then we received some feedback that was really challenging for us, especially for me or another colleague that were in this group. And we're both women, and we think we've done so much to communicate to younger females. And so we got some feedback like that they were missing some real communication. I think they meant, because it was anonymous, so you couldn't really get to know who said it and had a wider conversation. But really, there was a point there that maybe the communication has to be a lot more intense and a lot more direct, and you really have to have it on a regular basis, so that it's a lot of time that you have to put on it, so that younger females can really understand how you do it, what are the possibilities, if it's really that as hard as it looks, or maybe there's a way around it that makes you keep on doing it, right? So I think that's one of the challenges we have, be able to maybe the mentorship program is one issue, it's one solution of many, but I think we really need to put a lot of effort on communicating between women and younger lawyers, and try to see your point.
Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, one of the issues is role models. So more junior lawyers will be looking to more senior lawyers, female lawyers, as their role models. And if you aren't open about the challenges that you face, then it does seem very much like the role model has achieved an impossible target. And people can give up, and I totally understand why. Dorothy, what about the perspective from Asia?
Well, we have the same difficulty as Anna says. Some ladies or some female lawyers who actually don't want to be pushed into that partnership role, and they prefer to be sort of, to borrow a term, you call them career managers. So their careers is senior associates or to a level where they don't, because they don't want the added obligation and the task of having to be a partner. And also, it is not only a job, it's also the fight. To become a part of the partnership, it's also sometimes having to fight your way consistently, to put aside other people's perspectives. You know, you sort of like have to work a little harder just to get people's notions out of their minds. They may not be prepared to take all of that on. So sometimes they would prefer to go to a very senior position and just stop there so that they can actually really have a life. So in order to embrace diversity, and if we can call it, for a want of a better word, sort of like a social diversity, the social standing they want, we have to continue to embrace them. We can't say, well, why aren't you doing this? I've paved the way for you. You should. No, we have to allow them to choose this, because otherwise we're again imposing our notions on what they ought to be doing. We have to accommodate and respect that this is what they want.
Right.
Because not everybody wants to go that beaten path that we've done, sort of.
And do you find that that's just about female lawyers or about younger men lawyers as well?
I find it's mostly the female lawyers, because I think it's a lot. If they want to start a family, and they want to be able to have more wholesome family time, then, you know, not putting themselves out there, they save a lot of energy. It's not only just the role, it's also, as I said, the fight. And you all know what I mean when you say you have to walk stronger, walk taller, work harder, sometimes just to get the same level of respect or recognition. And that's a tiresome fight sometimes. And not everybody's for it. Not everybody wants the energy to be expended on it. And I appreciate and I understand. But then you mustn't neglect them. It's easy to not foster them because you're trying to foster the ones that want the partnership. You have to take care of these people because they're very important contributors to your team. And they are entitled to feel that they don't want that particular objective. I mean, what Catharine said was very important, and I love that. I'm going to borrow it forever, is that success looks different for everybody.
I could add a comment on this. I think law firm, and this is, I think, globally a problem, the failure of law firms to develop different structures is leading to a major weakness in the ability to recover from the pandemic. We certainly have seen in the United States, and Tina, you can weigh in and disagree or whatever, but more and more lawyers, whether they're women or men, does not matter, are unhappy. They do not feel satisfied in the law firm environment as we know it in the United States. And you know, a lot of people lose sight of the fact that law firm structure in the U.S. is very much driven by state statutes, many of which were enacted during the Great Depression, and they're really not suited for the year 2020. But it limits what a law firm can do about giving equity stakes to people and all sorts of things about how law firms operate. And so I think many firms have seen lawyers of all kinds leave. You know, when I started practicing law, people did not leave private law firms. It was a very rare thing. They might go on the bench. Maybe they would become general counsel. But now you see much lateral movement all the time. Chunks of law firms break. It's a generally unstable environment, I think. And I think part of it is this failure to develop alternative roles that provide other paths to job satisfaction. And unfortunately, in the U.S., a lot of that is limited by state statutes that have not changed in decades. But I think I know the American Bar Association has been very focused on these issues as well as on diversity, and it is attempting to lead the way to make change in this area. But it'll be, again, interesting to see if the pandemic will be the triggering event that will make this change happen more quickly.
Mm. I agree with you, Catherine. I think the structural issues are really a problem for law firms. And it's, to my mind, as I was indicating earlier, it's not just about women. I think a lot of it is generational. And I think one of the issues that we face is that these days a young lawyer starting in practice may have 50 years worth of work ahead of them as the demographics change and our longevity changes. And who is going to
interject? They also have 10 years of debt behind them.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
As well. Yeah.
It's just getting worse. Excuse me for interrupting.
Yeah. No, absolutely no. But I think it's a very different. They're looking ahead at a very different life and working lifestyle than the ones perhaps that we looked at. So I think we really do need to ensure that we're creating structures and career paths which recognize that. Otherwise we are in danger of losing really talented people, and as I said a moment ago, not just women, talented people.
Yeah, I think at least for the data that I've seen, and I know for our firm, when we look at diversity and bringing in talent, we do a really good job of recruiting. It's once we have the folks, I think it's keeping them is the tricky part. And so we'll have really good statistics when you look at our diversity metrics on recruitment, but as you go higher up the scale, as far as equity partners or income partners, our numbers start to drop. I don't believe we're at the level in Asia that Dorothy mentioned, where we have 75% of women in law schools. I think we're still in that 50-50. I think we're slightly higher right now. And like I said, our recruitment numbers come in, but the structure, the opportunities we offer, all of those things, trying to figure out how do we define success for everyone and find a place for everyone is to me one of our biggest challenges, is trying to figure out how to do that. I think we're getting much better at some of the making sure people have equal opportunities. We've been looking at a lot of those kinds of things. Implicit bias was a fascinating item for me, because I remember there was a question about helping. There was a choice that there was a young woman who had just given birth and a young man, and there was a big trial and it was going to be very intensive, and the question was, what do you do? And I thought, I don't want to put that young woman in the position of having to say no or feeling awkward about the opportunity, so I guess I wouldn't do that. And then, as of course I realize that's now completely the wrong answer. The right answer is to give her that opportunity just as you would anybody else. But I was shocked to find out that, oh my gosh, I had this bias that changed that. But I think we're becoming more aware of that, and we're looking objectively. We've put in procedures so that we are looking at how are we giving work away to our associates? How are we doing this, and trying to make those processes more even-handed across all the different groups of diversity. But it's still difficult for us to keep people, and we've even done reduced schedules. So we'll have attorneys can work, and they are to, I can't remember to whose point it was, but it is predominantly, it tends to be women who take advantage of those. But we are starting to see men take reduced schedules, and so I'm hopeful that will take even more of the stigma out of it. But it's a fascinating and difficult problem. But I don't know if you guys have found anything, but I would love to hear it for solutions.
Can I just change the topic for a few minutes and just ask if any of you in your law firms are seeing pressure from clients on the inclusion and diversity agenda, where the clients on pitches are saying, we need you to demonstrate your inclusion and diversity credentials?
I'd say hallelujah. I'm so glad. This has been a perennial problem, and many of our clients, starting maybe about 10 years ago, actually, as the numbers of women got into the in-house positions, they were finally saying, look, you know, we're going to go try a case. We want our team to look like the customers that we serve, to look like who's going to be on the jury. And I have a law school classmate, Tom Sager, who was general counsel at DuPont for many years. And Tom led the charge in the U.S. for diversity, particularly in trial teams. So I'll just give him a shout out right now. He's retired from DuPont, but you know, it is, thank heavens for that insistence by clients. And I think that's one of the factors that has made things change more quickly in the last 4 or 5 years.
We are definitely seeing it. I would say 5 years ago, we maybe had 1 or 2 clients ask for that kind of information. But that number increases, and I'm sure we're into tens of that, like 40, 50, 60, where every single year we will fill out, how are you doing? They want to know your statistics. They want to know what your changes are. They want to know the programs that you are involved in, the things that you do on a diversity front. We are seeing, I think we are trying to be more cognizant when we put together RFPs for work that we are ensuring that we are putting together diverse teams. And so, but we definitely, I wish I could tell you that a lot of firms in the United States did this on their own, but I think the clients were one of the motivating factors for a lot of firms. Sorry. Yeah, no, I think that, I wish that wasn't the case, but I honestly think that the clients doing that, it does make a significant difference to firms, that even it got them thinking. This is to the point of, you know, they have to understand that this is important, and that is one way that gets certain people's attention, is if it hits their bottom line.
Yeah.
Although we are not making progress in the area of litigation, 2 friends of mine did an article about 10 years ago entitled First Chairs on how often women appeared in federal court in the United States as first chair in a major case. And it was just horrible. And there was all this chatter about, you know, we need to do something about this. We need to get more women out there. Well, the New York Bar Association just did another, this is a hard issue to study because most jurisdictions don't keep statistics, but they just did another effort focusing on the courts in New York State, and it did much better than it was 10 years ago. And that is certainly very, very disappointing. But we'll see.
Yeah, we've seen a lot when it comes to panel pitches, but when it comes to pitches for specific jobs, whether that's a litigation job or a, you know, corporate transactional job, we've seen less focus on inclusion and diversity. And one of the struggles one has is you want to put the best people forward for the client job, and there are certain areas of the business which are, you know, smaller practice areas where you don't necessarily have a diverse choice of lawyer to put forward.
Yeah, they're not all in the practices that you want. Like sometimes, like, you know, for whatever practice, that certainly attracts a certain gender more than the others, so it may not be balanced.
Absolutely. Same here. I think that we don't see it as much as in the US. Many of the requests I particularly had on my field was from US companies that asked on pitches what was our diversity and our inclusion policies and so on. But I think we're going to go and see, we're going to get and see more and more of this. The challenge, I guess, is that we get from ticking the box. We have an inclusion program to how this really is it true, right? How are you really doing? So I guess that's going to be the challenge.
So, ladies, this has been fascinating, and I'd love to continue talking for longer. We're talking, for those of our audience members who aren't with us today, we're talking across time zones, ranging from now 6 in the morning to 10 at night. So thank you very much to Tina and Dorothy in particular, who are working at different ends of the clock, different positions on the clock. Thank you to Catharine and to Anna. And we look forward to continuing our discussion when we next meet. And I know all of us are very much looking forward to seeing each other again in person, wherever in the world that might be. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.